The Memory of Love, Chapter 25. Kai watched the pump lever move up and down. The pink liquid slide from side to side within the glass tank as the lever dropped, rising in all faithful stank. To Kai, the color of petrol was a faint surprise, always. He stretched, felt the skin tight across his back from the swing. Diving with the car windows down, he retained the feeling of freshness from the first dive into the water. Somehow, he had never expected to find their old haunt unchanged. Surely, that was the true force of nature. When so much else lay in ruins, the waterfall, the rocks, the river, these things remained. One station in town with petrol, cars, motorbikes, people holding containers, all waited in a line. Still, Kai's mood was good. He counted out the notes and gave them to the attendant. Afterwards, he held his hands out in front of him and spread his fingers. No trembling. Good. He looked around for Abbas and Adrian. The driver of the car next in line sounded his horn and gave a lazy wave. And so Kai slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the petrol station. He packed up, still looking around. There was Abbas. The boy stood, fingering cassettes with all the awe and yearning of an archaeologist handling an ancient port. He knows he must return to the earth. Of Adrian, there was no sign. Kai got out of the car and went over to the stall, where the stall holder, in his white jellaba and scarlet cap, perched upon his stool like a stork, one leg crossed over the other. "Hey, little man." But Abbas, deafened by the music, didn't hear him. Kai put the palms of his hands on the child's head. Abbas tried to swivel around. Kai applied pressure, pinning him to the spot. Abbas giggled and squirmed. The stall holder joined in, laughing oilily. "Yes, sir. Your son has been safe with me." Kai nodded at him briefly and waited for Abbas to correct the stallholder, to tell him Kai was his uncle. Children were particular like that, but Abbas said nothing. Kai looked down at Abbas, at his bowed head. The pattern of the hairs near perfect concentric circle, ending in a single hair in the center of the crown. The curved rim of his ears, the unblemished skin. He wondered if Abbas remembered anything about his father. He had never asked, and earlier that day, seeing the bodies by the side of the road, Abbas had displayed only a child's morbid curiosity. "Look," Abbas held the cassette box up for Kai's inspection. "Is this the one you want?" Abbas nodded vigorously. The vendor watched sideways on. "How much?" Kai asked the vendor. 5,000, the man replied. Kai dug in his pocket for the notes. "What of this one?" The vendor held up a second cassette. Kai felt Abbas's eyes upon him. "No thanks, just the one," said Kai. Then to Abbas, "Where's Adrian?" "He's coming back soon. He said I should wait." "How long ago was that?" "I don't know," said Abbas, shrugging as he inspected his purchase. "Not very long, I don't think." Then with more emphasis, "Like a minute maybe." 20 minutes now," said the vendor as he took the money. Kai looked at the man properly this time. "Did he say where he was going?" "No," said Abbas sharply. "He didn't say anything, except I was to stay here." The vendor didn't reply directly, but pointed with his chin as he pushed the notes into his money belt. "This road here, this is the one he took." "Thank you." "Come on." He reached out for Abbas. "Let's go find Adrian." He released Abbas's hand and watched the kid run ahead, his arms wide, kicking up dust. No sign of Adrian down the road, the stallholder had indicated. The street was empty. The market extended no farther than the square. Dusk was deepening. Houses were shuttered up, the occupants mostly out back, gathered around the cooking fires. Abbas made a game of it, rushing to peer down every side road and calling out Adrian's name. When he heard Abbas's cry, Kai began to run. By the time he reached the corner, his heart was racing. He turned into the street. In the half light, Abbas was standing, staring ahead in the middle of the road, his hands hanging limply by his side. Beyond him, a man lay on the ground. It took 10 minutes to reach the car. Kai placed one of Adrian's arms around his shoulder and hoisted him to his feet after he checked to see if anything was broken. Running expert fingers across Adrian's ribs, Abbas ran ahead to open the door of the car so Adrian could lie on the back seat. But Adrian demurred, climbed gingerly into the front. Kai sent Abbas to the boot to fetch water. The boy stood and watched, frowning and intent, while Adrian sipped from the bottle and then handed it back. Kai said little, but concentrated on finding his way back onto the main road. In the white light of the passing vehicle, Adrian's skin was bluish, covered in a sheen of sweat. "Is Uncle Adrian going to be all right?" asked Abbas. The boy sat, pressed against the upholstery, clutching the water bottle in his lap. Adrian turned his head stiffly. "Yes, don't worry about me, Abbas. I'm going to be fine." And then, "I was hit by somebody on a bicycle. I don't suppose he saw me in the dark." "A bicycle?" repeated Abbas wonderingly. "Yes." Kai said nothing, and they left it there, by silent mutual assent. An hour and a half later, they dropped Abbas at home. The boy pushed the water bottle into Adrian's hands, along with his new cassette. Adrian kept the water, but handed the cassette back. "We'll listen to it together another time. How about that?" Abbas nodded. "Tell your mom I'll be back later," said Kai. "I need to take Adrian home." Kai listened to Adrian's account of what happened, of seeing Agnes following her to the house, the son-in-law, the daughter, Agnes's reluctance. Then had come the attack by the son-in-law. Adrian had no doubt. The man had been with him 1 minute, gone the next. Kai drove in silence throughout. "You went to her home?" he asked, when Adrian had finished. "Yes," replied Adrian. "I shouldn't have. Not strictly speaking, but these are unusual circumstances. She needs help. I'm just saying, you have to take some care. You don't understand this country. There are a lot of bad people out there. You could have got yourself really hurt." In the apartment, Adrian disappeared into the bathroom. Kai went to the kitchen, where he filled the kettle and put it on boil. Though he wasn't hungry, he began rummaging through the cupboards, purely out of habit. A life lived without fast food and snacks had made him an opportunistic eater. As a child, he ate whatever was put in front of him. Meat was a treat. He and his sister fought surreptitiously with their forks over the best pieces. Then later, training as a doctor and eating on the run, years of half-eaten meals finished cold often hours later. He never suffered indigestion. He decided against tea, lifted the kettle from the stove and helped himself to a beer from the fridge instead. Adrian appeared. "How do you feel?" asked Kai. "I'll leave. Do you want me to take a look?" Adrian shook his head. "Actually, what I really want now is a whiskey. Let me have a look at you." He stood in front of Adrian, surveyed his face, reached for his wrist, and checked his pulse, pressed on the ends of Adrian's fingers. Then he located one of the 2 tumblers Adrian possessed and poured a sizable measure of whiskey into it. He handed it to Adrian. "I could run a couple of x-rays just to be sure." "No, really, I'm fine. He wasn't trying to kill me. I'm sure if he wanted, he could have." Adrian poured a small amount of water from a bottle into his whiskey, stirred deeply into the glass for a moment, swallowed the contents and inhaled. "Smell that. My father used to call it releasing the serpent. The water frees the flavor. He was a whiskey man. I didn't really take it until a few years ago. Funny that." "What did he want?" asked Kai. For a moment, Adrian looked at him perplexed. "The guy back there, said Kai. "I don't know." Adrian shook his head and stared into the glass. "Money? And yet he didn't steal anything from you." Kai took a sip of his beer and shook his head. "Makes no sense. He had every opportunity. You were out cold. What then? My guess, he just didn't want you around, so it would seem. For sure not. They were silent. Adrian continued looking into his whiskey glass. Then, without warning, he said, I need to go back. Kai did not answer. Instead, he tipped the rest of his beer down his throat, opened the bin and dropped the bottle inside. Then he opened the fridge and brought out some eggs, set the frying pan on the flame. By the time he broke the first egg into the pan, the oil was so hot the edges of the egg curled up and began to brown. When he cooked, he could think more clearly. He flicked hot oil over the surface of the egg, watched the white grow opaque, the yolk stiffen. Behind him, Adrian repeated, I need to go back. Kai gave a slight shake of his head. Don't be fucking crazy. I need to. Listen, said Kai, more sharply than he intended. You have no idea what you're getting into. A lot of things have happened here. During the war, a lot of people did a lot of things. Others used the opportunity to make a lot of money. War makes some people rich. That guy is mixed up in something heavy. Whatever is going on in that house, drugs, most likely. You don't want to know. What about Agnes? What about Agnes? She's suffering post-traumatic stress. She is ill. Jesus! Angry now, Kai turned to face Adrian, oil dripping from the spatula onto the worktop and the floor following the sweep of his hand. How the hell can I explain this to you in a way you will understand? How many months have you been here? 2, 3, there's been a war. What do you expect? This isn't a game. The guy in that house doesn't give a damn that you are a British passport holder. If he needs to kill you, he will. Adrian took a piece of kitchen roll and wiped the oil from the counter, squatted down to wipe the floor. Kai saw the grimace, the juddering in his breathing, evidence of the effort it cost him. Now he felt bad. He shook his head. This isn't your country, man. I'm sorry, but this isn't your country. I know that, said Adrian. I know this isn't my country, but it is my job. He stepped forward, reached for the whiskey bottle and poured himself another glass before returning to his former position against the wall. Only this time, he slid down it and sat on the floor. Kai removed one egg and cracked another into the pan. It was errantly that brought them here, flooding in through the gaping wound left by the war. Lascivious in their eagerness, Kai had seen it in the feverish eyes of the women, the sweat on their upper lips, the smell of their breath as they pressed close together. They came to get their newspaper stories, to save black babies, to spread the word, to make money, to fuck black bodies. They all had their own reasons. Modern day knights, each after his or her trophy. Their very own holy grail. Adrian's grail was Agnes. And yet for Kai, it was simple. His patients came, an unending trail. If he worked as a surgeon, he saw life, it would never be enough. In that way, his professional life was self-sufficient, possessed clarity. His achievements were measurable. The people he treated walked again, or breathed again, lived again. Kai knew something of Adrian's early experiences. Here at the hospital, when they first met, he remembered his sense of the other man as what? Unanchored. Since then, Kai had witnessed the shift in Adrian. Talk of Iliana, of the man who ran the mental hospital. What was his name? Attila. Kai had met Attila only once. At a funding conference, he had found himself alone with Attila for a few minutes. The only two black faces in the room. Kai had been impressed, thinking Attila had got closer to a kind of truth than anyone else. Attila understood something which Adrian did not yet. He looked at Adrian's face, narrow and pale. Lethargy in his friend, despaired during the course of the day, had returned. Kai thought, too, of the last time he'd been to that town, Port Loko, with Tejani, their last trip together, on their way to find the Lassa fever doctor. They'd done it against the odds, not even knowing if the man existed. The country on the brink of anarchy. For the hell of it, Tejani. The second egg was cooked on the underside. Kai flipped it over. He said, "So what's the plan? Go back when he's not around?" Adrian lifted his head. "Yes. Talk to the daughter. She wanted the best for her mother. It was the son-in-law who was the problem. Whatever he is involved in, she isn't part of it, I'm certain." Kai removed the pan from the gas ring, slid the cooked egg out onto the plate, reached for another egg and rolled it around the palm of his right hand, contemplating possibilities. "And how is that going to work? You can't just hang around on the street corner in a place like that. You especially." With one hand, he cracked the egg into the pan. "You are right," said Adrian. He struggled to his feet, whiskey in his hand. "What if?" "No, it's too much to ask." "Then what if you came with me?" Kai looked at Adrian and looked away. He took a deep breath and released it. A moment ago, some reason, he'd been on the brink of saying yes. Now he felt Adrian's hopes building, filling the space. The idea was reckless. He shook his head. "It's just too dangerous. Look what this guy already did to you. You could end up making it worse for Agnes. Listen, man, I'm sorry. I know how you feel, but it isn't worth it." Kai could feel the disappointment in Adrian, the slackening of the shoulders. He didn't look at him. Too bad. What to do? There were too many like Adrian here, living out their unfinished dreams. He reached up to the shelf above his head and brought down a bottle of ketchup. "Come on, you should eat."